Hello and welcome to vChat number 22. I'm David Davis from VMworldVideos.com.
I'm Simon Seagrave from techheads.co.uk.
And I'm Eric Siebert from vSphereland.com.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me on the vChat. How's it going?
Yeah,
good.
Thanks, David. No, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. I think all of us have been staying busy in that. There's been a lot going on with new jobs, new roles, and everything else.
Yeah, so speaking of that...
Yeah, a couple of conferences as well.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a vChat, so we have a lot to talk about. Eric, actually Simon, you were the only one of us at VMworld Europe, is that right? Eric, you weren't there?
Yeah. I didn't quite make it across to Vegas, but made it to Copenhagen, which was great.
Yeah, so how was Europe this year?
Yeah, it was good. It was back at the Bella Center in Copenhagen again. It's a good venue. Admittedly, Copenhagen, great place, but one of the most expensive places I think I've ever been to in my life. Even when you compare it to London prices, but it's a lovely place. It's a good venue. I see next year actually the VMworld Europe's going to be in Barcelona, so
cool.
That's going to be pretty cool. Change the scenery. I think the last time I was in Barcelona would have been for Microsoft TechEd, which would have been about 4 or 5 years ago now. So, Barcelona's a great venue as well. So I look forward to hopefully heading back there next year for that. But yeah, it was a really good event. Good attendance. I think it was around about the 7,000 mark. So obviously a lot smaller than Las Vegas, but still, a very good vibe there. Some great sessions. Those of you that headed along to Las Vegas, similar sort of thing, some really good, well-attended sessions there. A lot of vendor presence there. And of course, the hands-on labs, which I was fortunate enough to be part of this year. So I think I mentioned in an earlier vChat, so VMware reached out to 3 partners this year. So they reached out to Cisco, EMC, and NetApp to be part of that. So I was part of the team that help bring that together from EMC's perspective. So very, very well attended indeed, and great to work with the VMware hands-on lab team and also the other vendors as well. So it's a really good atmosphere there, really well attended. It was great to see a lot of people that I know through the blogging, readers of the blog, people I know through the VBeers as well, and people I hadn't met before, which was nice, So it was great. Like I say, good atmosphere, good vibe, and definitely well worth being there.
You didn't get roughed up by the Dutch V Mafia at all, did you?
No, I saw the video. I did see the VM monster. He actually came into the hands-on labs at one stage, and he was doing a lab there. Everyone was taking photos and everything, which was pretty cool. But I did see the Dutch Mafia taking on the VM monster
the video
later on in the show, but yeah, I saw the video there. Those of you that haven't seen that, jump on. I think it's up on YouTube. Do a Google on the Dutch VM Mafia and the VM monster. It's quite funny.
Yeah. Eric Siebert makes a good Don.
yeah, he's the obvious choice. Yeah.
Well, I don't think there was any. Funny. Major announcements there at all, was there, over VMworld Vegas? Anything new?
They kept a couple. No, nothing major. They kept a couple of little things back, but on the whole, the major announcements were, as you'd expect, at Vegas. So a lot of it was really following up on some of the announcements there. Like I say, there was some, other announcements that came out there, but the big ones that everyone listening to this or watching this would have heard by now.
Okay.
Yeah, the 2 new ones that I remember from VMworld Europe. One was around vCenter operations. I guess they went into more details and more packaging and pricing about the new vCenter operations. And then also, of course, the iPad client for vSphere that was announced there where it can do vMotion. Yeah,
I got that actually here.
Yeah, that's
looking at it, and just really vMotion. I like how they implement it with the, you swoosh across and that to make the vMotion happen, the flick and drag. But yeah, the vMotion's it. There's support for ESX 3.5 now and support for vSphere 5. So it's really a kind of a small update, really not a major upgrade. Of course, you have to update your vCMA if you try to put this new client on here. I was hoping, and maybe in the next release, that they finally get to the point where we'll have this natively and not have to have a vCMA anymore, which is kind of a pain to set up and maintain.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I felt it was more the products obviously we've been covering or talking about the iPad vCenter application for a while now. And yeah, I just felt it was more the application I think that we were all hoping for upon release. So, full credit to the VMware team behind that. So it definitely looks pretty slick. I haven't had time to install and play with it myself yet, but I've seen videos of it. And when I get my own home lab back out of storage again, I'll be sure to install it and get it up and running. But,
so what's going on in the home labs here? And so Simon, yours is in storage right now, so you'll be
well yeah, I look forward to getting it out of storage. So I've moved out to London a couple of months back now. So, we've just been trying to find a place. So I found a place now, which is great. Hopefully it's going to be a bit bigger than the shoebox I had before in central London to set up everything. It's probably not going to be massive, but, a little bit more space.
Dedicated heating and cooling for that lab and everything, and got all the plugs and get it all tricked out?
No, it actually consists. It's going to consist of being a summer house, actually. So it's a little sort of square wooden box of a room. I don't know quite how that's going to work out, but at the moment I'm just grateful for anything. And it's funny not having your kit around you, to sort of mess around with stuff. Whenever you have some spare time, perhaps in the evenings or the weekend. Just to go and try something that you've read about or an idea that you've had. So all I've had for these past couple of months is literally my laptop. So, survived quite well on that, but you can't beat having all your IT geek junk around you and stuff. So,
it's nice having the real.
In a couple of weeks' time, back to normal again.
So I recently went out and got a microserver. I know, Simon, you've been talking about it for a while. I was kind of hesitant on it just because the specs were kind of low and that, but I figured what the heck, it's really one of the most affordable package options you can get, and that if you want a home lab, something good for your home lab. What always worried me was the CPU, which was, pretty underpowered, like 1.2, 1.3 megahertz. They got a new model out that's now, I think, increases that a bit. Basically, it's the same otherwise, though. I haven't had a chance, I've kind of put it together. I maxed out the RAM to 8 gig and that. But it's definitely a cool little server that I think, Simon, you said it actually is pretty decent when you're running, VMs on it and that. I wasn't sure how it would handle, but it sounds like it's going to be able to handle that pretty well.
Yeah, for your basic little lab environment that you want to spin up, probably I'd recommend probably four to five VMs max on there. And also it depends, the workloads or the type of VMs that you're running on there as well, obviously. But probably 4 to 5 average VMs running on there with the 8 gigs of memory, like you mentioned, Eric. It handles it fine. The usual story actually, it tends to run out of the two bottlenecks on it. Obviously, the memory, 8 gigs is as far as you can take it. Even with the new N40 CPU-based model, it's still 8 gigs. But, as you'd expect, it's only got 2 slots. It's a very small form factor, so, you wouldn't expect anything more, really. And the other thing is literally the speed of the storage controller on there. It's not RAID, which doesn't matter because it's only a home lab, but just the speed as well. But interesting enough, I actually run an SSD in mine as well as a couple of SATA disks. So there's 4 drive bays in there in total. You put them into a caddy, slide them in. So I use SSD on one, and it screams along nicely. It does handle 5 VMs quite comfortably. And also what I use the SSD for as well, because I now run it with the vSphere 5. Actually use it for the new caching facility as well. So vSphere 5, the host actually picks up, it's got an SSD. He goes, do you want to use some of that as cache? So, I can oversubscribe things a little bit, take past the 8 gigs and, don't really notice too much, of a performance dip, but it is what it is. It's, it's entry level. Here in the UK, you can still pick them up with £100 cash back, so they work out about £100 each.
That was a big driver.
Pretty cheap, and 8 gigs of memory is pretty cheap.
Yeah, because here in the U.S., I think I got it for about $360 330, 340 and that, which was, when I looked up to bigger servers, it was a big price jump. So that was a good spot, if you want a really affordable option, that was really good. I just bought regular memory from Micro Center to max it out to the 8 gig for like $80 and that. So total investment, $450 or so around there.
Mm. Yeah, they're ideal. If anyone out there who wants just a very basic sort of setup to set their VCP or train for their VCP accreditation, it's ideal. It's ideal for that. And at that price point, you can't go wrong, really.
Yeah. And I got that new iOmega PX as well, and I haven't really had a chance to really set that up as vSphere yet, but it's a very nice looking, better performing than the iX unit, so I'm looking forward to playing with that more as well.
Yeah, the PX is good as well. I mean, it's I like the PX. I've got a little PX4, I run a couple of SSD, and they're just, admittedly, I think they're only 80 gig, 60 gig ones, because that's all I could afford at the time. And I can't afford getting anything bigger than that. It's great because you can make SATA, you can make SSD in there, and the reason it's actually, it can handle SSD, whereas a lot of people out there, including myself, with the old iOmega iX4s, you tried to install SSD on there, it basically just saturated the CPU on the iX i4. So the PX has obviously got the larger CPU in there, it's got more memory, it's just set up to handle SSD so much better, and the fact that you can mix SSD and SATA, it's nice. It's a nice little unit.
So you can set up multiple tiers or LUNs on that then, or multiple volumes inside of it with the different types of storage? Yeah,
different storage volumes on there. So you could have SSD. For example, you could have a pair of SSD on there, and then you could have a pair of SATA in there.
Okay.
You just present them out as just different storage volumes, or as it were. So you could have one as iSCSI, you have one as NFS. It's obviously got the 2 1 gigabit ports at the back. So and do a little bit of load balancing over that as well. But
also supports USB
pretty slick
3
little units
as well. It's got one USB 3 port.
Apparently so, though. Yeah, apparently so. I don't have any USB 3 devices or anything tested at the moment, but I know talking internally to the iOmega guys, I think that they've got some really they've got some great plans for the PX series of devices. I know literally what you see there at the moment. They're going to be building on that over time. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to say what one of those things are going to be, but quite impressed. They've got some grand plans for them, and they're good advice. Whether it's for a branch office or home lab or for the SMB, it's good. So
And then now with the big performance improvements, it makes it a lot better and more usable with vSphere.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it just works. I mean, and if you've got something like the little microserver there, which is, the storage controller on there isn't particularly great. So, if you need sort of better storage performance, your options are one or two things, basically. You put SSD in there, but at the end of the day, you've got that entry level controller on the board. So there's not much you can do with it. You can get a half height PCIe, controller, that you could put in there, but that's extra expense. Or you look for a shared device, NAS device like the PX or the iX.
Right.
It sort of gets around all of that, and you just run all your VMs off of there.
Yeah.
Also set up your TV programs, your films, all that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, multi-purpose, exactly. Yeah, use it for a lot of things.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. Yeah. So what about you, David? Any new additions to your labs, or any rebuilds or anything like that?
The only thing I've done with my lab lately is I had an old shuttle server that originally I tried to install ESXi on, and the local storage wasn't recognized. And so I was running Hyper-V on it, and I would even run like vCenter as a virtual machine inside of that sometimes if I wanted vCenter off of my two ESXi hosts. But one day it dawned on me that I could take a USB key, and just stick that in the back of the shuttle and just run ESXi off of that. So now I've got that third ESXi server in my lab. So that's worked out pretty well. Recently I've gotten a lot of questions from people via email and on my blog about, I'm studying for the VCP5 or the VCAP DCA, and like, what should I get for my home lab? And I've been recommending, either one, like go virtual and like use Workstation 8 or Fusion 4 with, nested virtual machines, or, look at the microserver and get like an IX4 or something, like a couple microservers and an IX4, I was thinking would probably make a good home lab. In fact, I'm going to look at getting a microserver myself. So
cool.
But that's what I've been up to.
So you've actually been studying for the vCP 5 too as well, haven't you? Taking the test?
Yeah, I'm going to take it next. Yeah, I'm going to take it next week. And, it's amazing how, to me, you can use vSphere every day and then go to study for the vCP 5 and actually learn a lot. So I've been, amazed at all the, sort of theoretical, sort of obscure things that I've been studying that I just didn't have the need to use, in vSphere 5. And, for all the training, video I spent a lot of time making on vSphere 5, I sort of assumed that I had learned most of everything in there. But, actually I've been learning a lot and studying for the vCP 5, all these different, driver types and, security of the drivers. And they have VMware verified and supported and partner supported and different levels of security for drivers and, things that I just hadn't looked at. So, interesting stuff.
I know you have like the traditional document to study like the maximum configurations and that. Any other resources you've been using to really kind of help prepare for that?
Basically, I've just been taking the blueprint and just, going down each topic and like Googling and researching. And, there's been a lot of good posts recently, like Damian Carlson, VMDK, I think is his blog.
Right.
He's got a post where he compares the vSphere or the vCP 4 blueprint to the vCP 5 blueprint.
Okay.
And he goes down every section and he talks about, what has changed and what you need to study. There's some other good posts. Actually, Simon Long, I've been referring a lot of people to his blog. He's got some free practice test, like quiz questions. He's got actually a nice practice test engine where you can go there and he's got the vSphere 5 configuration maximum questions, and then he's just got vCP 5 quiz questions. And Eric Siebert, he did a nice post on the vCP 5, and so there's a lot of good resources out there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm going to start heading to do my vCP 5, I think, come the new year. Being a little bit busy towards the end of this year, but definitely first couple of months next year, I think I'll go and sit it. I picked up a copy of Scott Lowe's new book over in VMworld Copenhagen that he was kind enough to sign for me as well, which is pretty cool. But I haven't read all the way through it yet, but that's definitely a good resource as well. I was very impressed with Scott's first edition vSphere book, and this one definitely doesn't disappoint either. There's some really good content in there.
David, was Train Signal doing a study thing or something, a prep for the vCP 5 at all?
So like Elias and I, we did the vCP 5 training video, that was released at Las Vegas at VMworld. And I think that's a good resource. A lot of people say, well, does that prepare you for the vCP 5? And my answer is, I think it prepares you for maybe half of the vCP 5 by giving you the more hands-on side of it.
Okay.
Like what is storage DRS and how do you use it? How do you configure it? It shows you all the how-to type stuff.
Okay.
But we don't spend a lot of time on, the theory. We try to show more hands-on. So, the vCP 5 test, I think it has a lot of both. You need to know what to click and where to configure, but then you also need to know, like, what are the, what's the maximum amount of RAM you can configure on a virtual machine or, something like that. So I think it prepares you for a little bit of both. And yeah, Scott Lowe's book is a great resource as well.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think when I start doing some of my studies, I start towards that, I'll be throwing up a few blog posts around it as well, just to really list the useful links and resources that I've come across as well, I think, and hopefully it'll help others.
And speaking of books,
so we've got the deadline of February 29th, the last day of February 2012. To take the exam and upgrade from your vCP 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So
go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, speaking of books, and I think we got a lot of new ones. You mentioned Scott Lowe's book. We got Mike Laverick's new SRM5 book that I think at VMworld there was the author draft, but I think is the full copy out now for Mike's?
I think so. I'm not 100%.
If not, it might be soon. We have
I saw the pre-release copy, yeah.
Ah, cool. Signed?
Yeah, I got to sign, yeah.
There's two signatures there. Is that a phrase and a signature?
No, it says, from one expert to another, keep up the good work, Mike Laverick.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Very nice.
Scott Duncan and Frank have the new HADRS book, and that, which is kind of a follow-up to their original book. You know, a lot of things changed in vSphere 5, so they changed the book accordingly. Great resource. Highly recommend reading that. It really gives you the in-depth knowledge of how it actually works behind the scenes, how to properly configure it, utilize it, and stuff like that. So that's another good resource for, you know,
that's a great value. I mean, you can get that on Amazon, the electronic version, for $9.99.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's very good value.
Any other
there's a lot of other... well, there's some other VMware Press books coming out. In fact, this flyer that was inside my storage book here, I don't know if you can see that actually, shows 3 more VMware Press books that are coming. Okay. One's by Cody Bunch, you know, automating vCenter or vSphere with VMware vCenter Orchestrator. Okay. And then there's another one I pre-ordered on Amazon called Storage Design and Implementation with vSphere 5. So they've got some good press books on the way from the new VMware Press. And there's another one, actually Cisco Press is starting to put out some like virtualization and cloud books. I found that interesting. I can tell you the name of it here in just a second. Cisco Press has got a new book you can pre-order called Cloud Computing Automating the Virtualized Data Center. So I'll post a link to that as well.
That sounds interesting. It's interesting. So guys, out of printed format books and electronic formatted books, what's your preference? With with e-readers and Kindles, everything being mainstream now for the last year or two. Have you switched across to buying in manuals in electronic form, or are you still sort of staunch old school, paper
old school paper, and that, you know, I actually like doing both, and that because it's nice to be able to take, you know, for reference with you on a mobile device when needed. But if you're just sitting around the house reading, you know, I kind of prefer the paper, or on an airplane or something like that, the paper copy in that. It's kind of easier to flip through things and go back and forth in that. But, you know, I like having the electronic format because if you want to look at something, reference something, or easily search for something, you can do it a lot easier with electronic format than you can with the paper copy.
I'm with you on that. I think, I'm always a bit disappointed because I kind of think if you buy the paper version, I kind of think you should get the electronic version perhaps as well, rather than have to go out and buy the book again at the same price.
Discounted price at least.
Yeah, it should be reflected in the price. I know Scott had a strange situation with Amazon, and he was getting a lot of queries about it on Twitter. But so basically, his Kindle version of his new vSphere 5 book was actually over here in the UK. I think it was £10 more than the actual paper version. And people were going, "Hang on, what's going on here? This is kind of crazy."
No sense.
And apparently, it's just a weird Amazon thing. I don't know if it's been rectified now, but I know he was definitely concerned about that and was going to take it up.
Okay.
But it's interesting. I've been running a poll as well for the last couple of weeks on the website as well, because I was kind of curious as to what the consensus was out there. And I've got to say, it's a real 50-50 split. Most people, they either like the paper format or they like the electronic format. So it's real straight down the middle at the moment.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Pros and cons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, Eric, tell us about the top blog voting. What's the latest news on that?
Coming up soon. Doing things a little bit differently this time. There's so many blogs these days and that, so I think I'm going to maybe expand a little more from the top 25 to maybe like the top 40 and that, just to give some of the other good blogs some more visibility in that. I think at last count on my vLaunchpad, there's probably 200 plus blogs, websites devoted to kind of VMware stuff and that, so seems to keep growing and not going down, and that, you got some blogs that people after time don't pay attention to anymore, and they kind of, fall off the map, but there's still a lot of good stuff out there. So gonna probably open it up either this week or next week for voting. Gonna do things a little bit differently, where still have the standard top blog voting, the overall top 40, but doing some category voting as well, like the best new blog, the best blogger you most like to meet, the best storage blog and things like that. Just categories to kind of mix it up and add a little variety to it and that, and make it a little bit more fun. So look for something coming soon on that.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, because there's so many blogs that they try to stick to one topic, it's hard to compare, one blog to the apples to apples.
Best VDI blog, best cloud blog, stores blog, things like along that. So, because otherwise they're all lumped together and it's hard to really, know what's what and that. So kind of want to do it, kind of like the theme of the MTV Music Awards, they have categories and they have the overall, video of the year or blog of the year and stuff like that. So, So, coming soon. Look for a vChat Awards episode after we get that done and announce the results.
Cool.
Sponsored by Train Signal.
Awesome.
Okay.
So, have either one of you guys got the new iPhone 4S?
Nope.
No, still on the 4.
I think I am eligible now on 2 of my phones. I've gone 3GS, 4. For the 4s, I've paid full price, and that not the upgrade price, but I think I'm eligible for the cheaper upgrade now, which really balances out because if you sell your old one, it really wipes out the whole cost of the upgrade and that. Their value retains. I've always sold mine within minutes of putting it on Craigslist for, from $200 to $250 and that. So, but there just wasn't enough there with the 4S for me. It's basically the Siri stuff, a little bit faster processor, a little bit better video camera. What I actually did go out and buy was the Nano in watch form.
Oh, cool.
The Nano
watch.
So this is the special red Nano, and that it's got all the new clock faces now, and that you can only get the red Nano at the I think at the store. They only sell them there. You can't get them at Best Buy. That color and that. And then this special band is made by.
Is that the charity one, Eric?
What's that?
Is that the charity one? There's Apple's red charity, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I know it's a special one for them.
Some of the money goes to the charity on the red ones or something.
Okay. And then I got this Lunatic band, which is really cool. It's an aluminum frame that's built, to fit right on top of it and that. And, so it's a pretty cool overall design. It's real slick. It's real, packaged well and that. It makes a good watch, not too heavy and that. So that's what I got instead of the iPhone 4S, and that was the Nano.
Did you buy the band separately?
Yeah.
Is the band separate?
They do have a lot more bands.
From the Apple Store or somewhere else?
They have a lot at the Apple Store now, bands, and that I didn't like the ones they had there. I saw this Lunatic one online, which I really like, so I just bought it online. I think you can buy it from Apple online as well, and that. But yeah, I wish they did more with this Nano now. I'd like to see integration between the Nano and the iPhone and that. It's you can do all the things. You can do music, you do podcasts, the Nike fitness stuff. It's got an FM radio now. And all that, and it's got all the cool clock faces now. There's like 16 clock faces that you can use for all different things. It makes it really cool. It doesn't stay on all the time, and that you basically hit the button and the clock face will show up and that. But there's all these different, I don't know if you can see it there. It doesn't really come out that good. But all these different clock faces you can scroll through now that are pretty cool and fun to have. And that. So it makes for a cool geek watch, essentially, and that's more a toy than something that's super functional and that. So.
It's interesting you said about the 4S there, about maybe the 4S not having enough to justify the upgrade. I must admit, I was of that way of thinking as well. I've got an iPhone 4 at the moment, and to be honest with you, it does everything I need it to do. It's, a year on, I'm still impressed with it. It's a great product. But I've got to say, it's the Siri functionality in the 4S that is a real attraction. I think it's great. I think it's going to pave the way, going forward. I don't think sort of for smartphones coming out, but after the 4S, no doubt there's functionality, the voice control and or recognition software on there. Others are going to try and replicate it. And I think the way we use phones, we'll look back in sort of 5 years or so, and I think we'll actually, see the 4S, the Apple iPhone 4S as being the turning point as to how we do things with our smartphones. So I think it is quite a significant model, although it's not quite probably what the iPhone 5 is going to be. I think the Siri functionality is
cool.
That's quite cool, actually. I probably would, if I had the money, I probably would buy one just for that.
And you can, it's not something that's really a feature that's unique to that iPhone 4. Apple just made it. There you go, David's showing it. Apple just made it exclusive to the 4S. And, because we've seen these videos of people hacking their 4s and 3GSs and using the same functionality. It's really just software and then that you can use on any iPhone, but Apple kept it exclusive to the 4S, primarily probably just to drive sales of the 4S and give it people a better reason to upgrade to it. The interesting thing that I've heard is that this will probably now find its way into things like the Apple TV and the iMac. So look forward to seeing more of that in other devices. So asking about the vChat or VMware.
What, Eric?
We're going to see a live demo there of Siri, give it a V mark. Ask him a maximum configuration question on VMware. What is the maximum configuration of a LUN in vSphere 5 or something?
I think it's good. I don't know whether it's that good.
Search the web for vSphere 5 maximum configuration.
Searching for vSphere 5 maximum configuration.
And survey.
So what's that come back with?
It searched for vChar 5 max on configuration. Oh, but the first link is the VI35 maximum configurations. Close.
Close.
That's not bad. Not bad.
Maybe the iPhone 5 will find it better.
Than I thought it would be, I gotta say.
Yeah. But,
so it's interesting.
When I first got it, I talked to Siri all day long. And to the point I thought people were, going to stare at me in public. Like, why does he keep talking to Siri? And it was pretty cool. And I tested all sorts of things. And it gives you all kinds of examples. Like, you can compose text messages. You can write emails with Siri.
Set alarms.
Which, by the way, writing emails and text messages is kind of hard and frustrating, to be honest. But more simple things like set your alarm to wake you up at 6 a.m.
Maps.
That's easy. Check the weather. Yeah, do a map. Those more simple things work pretty well.
Cool. Yeah.
But I'd like the iPhone.
Because you went from
I like the new 4S.
You went from the 4 to the 4S, so it's But the other thing I think what interests me is the camera. I think these days everybody uses their iPhones for the camera. They don't, even though I have dedicated cameras, I never carry it with me in that. And even if you look at some of the sites like Flickr, they're saying like 60% of the content posted is from smartphones and that. So definitely it's nice to have a higher resolution camera because that's one you tend to primarily use all the time.
Yeah, I like the HD.
It's interesting. Sorry, Dave. I was just going to say part of Cisco's supposed reason for canning the flip camera was they stated apparently the majority of people use their smartphones now for taking video, so they didn't feel that the flip was justified anymore. Don't quite agree with that, but because the flip was a fantastic little video device, but yeah, but I can definitely see it. The video quality is very good on the iPhone, definitely. So talking about the 4S there, did you guys see the story around the voice of the 4S? So over here in the UK, I don't know whether you've got a different voice on the Siri in the
US we got a female in the US.
Yeah, we've got a male voice here in the UK, and basically the story came out a few days back that the chap that originally recorded the voice for that, a guy called John Briggs. He's a ex-technology journalist over here in the UK. He worked for a company about 5 to 6 years ago, and basically recorded all the words and everything that you hear coming out of a UK-based iPhone 4S around, with the Siri. It was interesting. Apparently, Apple tried to close them down to come out and sort of mention that it's him and it's his voice, but since he didn't have a contract with Apple, there was nothing stopping him. So interesting little story around that.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was pretty cool. That he had no idea when he was doing this years ago that it would come to this, or Apple bought
today through this Wednesday.
Sorry, I changed the voice of Siri to the English, the UK person you're talking about. That's interesting. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
You've got different language choices here.
That's cool.
I've got English Australian, English United Kingdom, English United States, French, and German. So I'll have to try these other languages and see.
I'd really like to see other voices, like if celebrity voices, like if I wanted Snoop Dogg doing it, or like the voice from Kit, Knight Rider, or something like that. That'd be cool to have a wide selection of voices so you can do all these different crazy voices and that.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
I think it's a matter of time, isn't it? Probably. I mean, you get that on your TomTom Navigator.
Yep.
You know, you can download different ones. You can get Mr. T, John Cleese, all sorts.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Really make it a lot more fun.
It's a matter of time.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I'll probably eventually do it. And that it's I just hasn't really been a big. Nothing jumped out at me as a huge wow factor. So I just kind of waiting.
Yeah. I'll wait to Vision 5. Yeah.
What helped me was AT&T said they'd give me $250 for trading in my old iPhone 4. So it was a trade-in program that essentially nullified the upgrade cost and made the upgrade really the same price that I was paying for my other phone that was an old 3GS. So
was it $250 based on the condition it was in, or?
As long as it was a good working, iPhone, iPhone 4, yeah, it was $250. And actually, though, I ended up, I just used one of those other trade-in programs on Google that I found, and I ended up trading in my 3GS and my 4 both to the same place. And they were like a little bit less than what AT&T was going to give, but they would do them both in the same package, and it was super easy. So that really helped me to, nullify the upgrade cost, or help to justify it. Making the move, so
yeah, definitely make it easier, not have to go to Craigslist to try to sell it or whatever, and so cool.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you guys, and tanging back a little bit back to VMware, but I mean, it's been a few months now, obviously, since vSphere 5's come out. What are you hearing around sort of adoption of vSphere 5, or people migrating across either from 3.5 or version 4 up to 5? Most people made the jump so far, or a lot of people holding off for the 5th service pack, for example?
I think a lot of people are holding out still because of the licensing and some other factors, with the architecture change. It's on the ESXi now, and that. There was a event here in Denver, and they asked that question. There was 100+ people there who has upgraded or is planning to upgrade to vSphere 5, in the coming months. And I think only out of all those people, 3 or 4 hands went up in that. So I think personally a lot of people are going to wait, and the licensing is a lot more complicated now. You have to reevaluate your environment to see if you're going to have to buy additional licenses and that. And feature wise, there are some good features there, but vSphere 4 is solid. A lot of great features. It works great. I don't think it's a huge compelling upgrade for a lot of people in that, especially with all the differences and between the licensing and the architecture now that they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. So many of the new features were Enterprise Plus only. They were more Enterprise features.
They're moving more and more stuff to that tier and that, so it's definitely. And I think I'd heard a stat from VMware that out of the licenses they sell, I think 60% are Enterprise Plus and that. So they pretty much, in the beginning, Enterprise Plus wasn't all that compelling when you have host profiles and distributed virtual switches, but now they're throwing everything in there, and that really becomes much more of a almost necessary upgrade for a lot of enterprises now, that to get all those extra features now, and the scalability as well, that you really need to move to that level.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be sort of planning, probably putting a lot of thought and a lot more planning into the upgrade rather than just sort of upgrading them overnight, as it were, I suspect. Some great new features in there. I mean, for me, it was definitely a big, it was the storage release, the storage update, because of all the new storage features and functionality and enhancements that came out with 5. And I think there's definitely compelling reasons to go to 5, definitely. I just think, but people that haven't done it so far, maybe they're just planning for their new year, so maybe perform their upgrades then. So
Yeah, and again, with the licensing changes, VMware gives no advance notice of this and that, and people have budgets and that. So you spring this on people, they don't have budget. They may not have budget next year for it either and that. So in a lot of cases, companies have to come up with the extra money they're going to need to go to this new licensing tier, and that takes time for them to budget and get the funds for it.
Yeah, so I guess, come April next year or after April, that's when all the new budgets will be coming out, the purse strings are open, and see a lot of upgrade projects kicking off, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I definitely think it'll be a slow migration in that, you'll see companies maybe do it as part of a refresh or that, there's no real huge jump to it right away, but if a company's planning a refresh, maybe they're refreshing their hardware, they'll do maybe a vSphere 5 refresh as well at the same time and that, because, especially if people are using the ESX Classic now, the classic architecture, where that's gone away, you have to get all the experience, how to make sure, how you know how to manage and deploy ESXi in that, and, so, there's definitely a little bit of learning curve there if you're not used to using ESXi, and now you're forced to use it in vSphere 5. That brings up another interesting, you see on Jason Baki's blog yesterday, I think, his questioning on that was, and I see this all the time, is, does it really matter? You see people say ESX and they mean ESX and ESXi and that, especially in documentation a lot and that, where there are two different architectures in that. So his questioning was along the lines of, does it matter to you when you hear ESX? Do you think ESXi? Do you think we should have only one? I mean, what will happen when, like vSphere 6 or whatever, will ESXi become ESX, stay ESXi? VMware's documentation's always been pretty badly, really behind the times as far as upgrading it. They still say ESX in a lot of cases, even in the vSphere 5 documentation where there is no more ESX. So I think it's just confusing in that for people because, they are two different architectures, and to kind of refer to them in the same term doesn't really, fit and make it, really make the distinction between the two.
I think it depends on the context of the conversations. I think if you're talking technical documentation, you've got to be pretty precise with what you're talking about. Because they did try to get to change the name across, didn't they? All tried to get everyone using for ESXi. They're trying to turn that sort of the vSphere hypervisor, aren't they?
The free version.
I haven't really seen too many people. Yeah, for the free version. But even with the free version, I haven't seen too many people adopt that at all, and they're still referring to it as ESXi. But
because what's funny when you
conversation is.
When you install the free version, it says ESXi on it. It doesn't say vSphere hypervisor. It's still the same thing. So, their marketing wrapper around it really it's not consistent with everything else.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place. It all comes down to context. If it's just casual conversation, I think you can use ESXi interchangeably, as long as the other person knows what you're talking about. But if you're talking to customers or, if you're talking technical documentation, even blog posts, I think you've got to be perhaps a little bit more succinct with what you're talking about, so as to avoid confusion.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I corrected a backup vendor recently. They said they supported Hyper-V and ESX. And I said, well, do you support ESXi? Do you support, vSphere 5? They're like, oh, yeah. I said, well then you need to update your documentation. Yeah.
That's important because I'm looking for a product and I have ESXi. I don't see that explicitly mentioned. I'm thinking, okay, well, move on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, yeah. This new VRAM pool pricing, being as I don't have an enterprise, and I don't have to think about that very much, maybe it didn't hit me as hard as some of these big customers who suddenly now have to look at every virtual machine and how much RAM is configured. But recently I've been working on a cloud computing project, and which by the way has been a horrendous mess trying to compare one cloud vendor to another when it comes to pricing. But one of the cloud vendors I'm using, their pricing model is based on the number of vCPUs, the amount of RAM, the number of concurrently running virtual machines, and the amount of storage. Oh, and the amount of hours that those virtual machines are powered on. So you have this formula. Anyway, it's hit me hard that, I have to pay when a virtual machine's powered on. This utility model sounds great, but for example, I was installing Windows Server. So my first, gut feeling is to start the install and walk away and get a cup of coffee. Of course, I forget about it. I walk back to the computer a few hours later, and I can see my hour meter at the bottom of the screen. And because I'm using 2 CPUs and 2 gigs of RAM on the server, that actually doubles the number of hours that I'm using. So I've used double the amount of hours, and my monthly quota is slowly shrinking away like a cell phone plan. And here I've just barely installed Windows Server, and I'm like, holy crap, this is a real pain to constantly keep an eye on the number of hours you're using. So it's been a real eye-opener.
Completely micromanage every single aspect of that, down from your storage resource usage, the CPU, memory, power, everything.
Right.
Then, huh? Yeah,
right. I mean, they have all these templates, these virtual machines that are in template form, but they just did like a flat 20 gigs of thickly provisioned storage.
Okay.
Well, if I clone those 100 times over, I'm using a lot more storage than I otherwise, really needed. Maybe I only needed 5 gigs or 10 gigs to install Windows Server. Or even say a virtual ESXi host.
Okay.
Maybe I only need 1 gig of storage, or whatever it might be. If I take their flat Linux image that's 10 gigs and I install ESXi on it, I'm just wasting all this space, and I have to pay for all that space. So it's been a real eye opener. And in the past, I always said, oh yeah, utility computing sounds great. You just pay by the minute. But on the other hand, when you have to pay by the minute, suddenly you find out what a real pain, it can be. So.
Yeah. Huh.
To me, the one thing that stands out there, it sounds like really they should cut you some slack. If you're implementing or installing a new VM, maybe a discounted rate, or maybe it's free until you've finished installing it. I don't know how they'd monitor or manage that. I don't know, but it does sound. I mean, it is true utility when you think it through. It is utility because, for example, you go to the supermarket, you've got an empty house with no lights in it. You choose, I guess, what wattage light bulb you're going to put in, whether it's a 50 watt or 100 watt or an energy saver, I guess, and. I suppose their comeback would be, well, you plug your light bulb in, you screw it in, you know what the wattage is going to be. The fact that you sort of turn the light bulb switch off in your bedroom and walk away, watch TV for the evening, and you forgot that you've left your light on in your bedroom is, I suppose they're just going to compare it back to true utility type pricing, I guess. But the problem with this, the interesting thing that got me thinking there, David, is you've got a lot of factors obviously in there. You're combining, CPU, memory, storage, all those things as well. And I can see how that could be quite hard to try and manage all that.
It really makes you stop and think about resource uses and all this stuff now, where before in a regular data center you don't do things without even thinking twice about it. Now you have to really sit down and think, do I really need all these resources? Do I need this and that? And, because you're being billed for every little thing on that.
Yeah, especially if it's a lab environment. I mean, with Workstation, I'm used to just, cloning virtual machines. And, the only thing that's eating up really is my laptop or desktop, resources. But, here you really have to think about it.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully I keep everyone a lot more honest. But what would be interesting, I wonder would it be like mobile phones. So if you think back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, mobile phone, cost of calls, or even a couple of years back with data tariffs on phones, right? So you guys would have been like me, you would have had one of the first smartphones came out because it was the geeky thing to do, right? Yep. And then you think about how much it costs per megabyte of traffic back there, and you compare it to now. I mean, over here for I think my plan on my iPhone, I bought my iPhone outright, but my tariff is about £12 a month, and I get something like 750 minutes of calls to any network any time, 750 texts, and unlimited internet for £12 a month. It's absolutely crazy, but that's, compare that to like 5 years ago. God, it'd probably be a couple £100, So I wonder whether over time, where I was going with that was, with this utility computing, it's definitely, everyone's still testing the water on it, and fast forward 5 years or what have you, maybe it just becomes so cheap that, it'd just be, pence and cents to run it.
Yeah, I think a lot of those cloud, you'd mentioned, David, there's a lot of different models. I think there's really, a lot of people are experimenting, a lot of these cloud companies are experimenting on their models and that, trying to figure out what's right, how to do it and get it priced right and all that. And there's a lot of competition between cloud vendors and that, so maybe that will help drive at least more of a common type pricing and that to make it, easier to compare between one and the other.
Yeah, I saw a new website this week called cloudcompare.com, and what it does is it compares the pricing from all the different VMware vCloud data center providers. So I think that's really cool because, it could almost become at one point, a marketplace. And if you have that portability, there's no Hotel California, and you say, well, you're charging me too much, I'll just move my servers somewhere else.
Check it out.
Then maybe like Simon said, the prices will go down over time. The bad thing is these different cloud companies that don't have, an apples to apples pricing model, or maybe all the vCloud data center providers do. There's other, providers that don't. In fact, one provider, they even wanted me to sign an NDA before they would tell me their pricing model and how much they were going to charge me. Okay. And I ended up telling them, just forget it. If you want me to sign an NDA just to know how much it costs, then I'm not interested.
Not going to happen. Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, cool stuff. It'll be interesting to see what the future holds. So, what else, guys?
Oh, I think we're about out of time. A lot of good topics in that, and try to do this a bit more regularly. And that, maybe do a holiday edition coming up soon, right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we'll have to break out our Santa hats again. So. That'll be fun. Yeah. And we'll have an upcoming we'll have a top blog vChat coming up soon too. So stay tuned for that. So thanks, Eric. Thanks, Simon. Thanks all our viewers for joining us.
Thanks very much. And of course, I can't let Eric get away with only him the only vendor hat here. So there we go.
Cool. David needs your train signal hat.
Well, I got a V-Nerd shirt here.
Okay. Well, that works.
Hey, there we go.
And I got my Distalt IT here, Tech Field Day shirt.
Cool.
I found one the other day, yeah.
Cool. All right, guys.
Thanks,
guys.
Talk to you soon.
Great chatting to you.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of vChat, the latest in virtualization and cloud computing news and how-to. Eric, Simon, and David want your feedback, so send questions or ideas for future vChat topics to vchat@trainsignal.com.